Welcome to Demand and Disrupt, the Disability Podcast. Here, we will learn to advocate for ourselves and each other. This podcast is supported with funds from the Advocado Press, based in Louisville, Kentucky. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Demand and Disrupt, a disability podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Parsley.
And I'm Sam Moore.
Hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Life is good, except, Kimberly, we do have one small problem. I just took my last sip from the coffee cup over here. So I need a refill.
You will just power down. You'll just start to power down as we talk, won't you?
If I gradually lose steam, you just let me know.
I will. Well, you got to stay on top of it because we got a great interview today. I interviewed Theo Braddy. He is the executive director of the National Council on Independent Living, and he had some words of wisdom, some great things to say. Longtime advocate, so you'll definitely want to stick around for that.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a very interesting topic and interesting man.
Yep, exciting conversation. And we're here right in December in the throes of the holiday season. So, Sam, how's your Christmas shopping going?
It's not going yet. I tell you, and I still need to. We do at our family Christmas gathering. We do, we do a gift exchange, and so I need to determine what I'm going to come up with for that. We used to try to keep it right around $25, but we've gotten kind of lenient with that, and our gifts now that we tend to circulate are upwards of around $40 or $50. Last year, I got a bottle of Maker's Mark, and so we know that's more expensive than $25.
Yeah. How about that?
So I guess I'm going to have to fork out be a little more generous this time around.
When I was at Thanksgiving with my family, someone said, "Yeah, this year there's only 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas," and it was like a record scratch. Everybody was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, it's like with Thanksgiving falling on the 28th. Next thing we know, it's December, and everybody's like,
I know.
December already?
Yes, exactly. I ended up doing a little bit of Amazon shopping. I did,
There you go. Actually, did you do some on Cyber Monday as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you celebrated that one too.
Yes.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Exactly. Well, my husband had the nerve to have been born on December 4th. So right in the midst of the chaos, we celebrated his birthday, and he had a rather large milestone birthday. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Well, we don't want you getting in trouble, but I have an idea what that milestone might be. But I'll keep that to myself. I'll just say happy birthday, Michael Parsley.
There you go. Yeah. So I have to shop for his birthday and amongst everything else, because you don't want to be you don't want to say, well, since your birthday's so close to Christmas, here's something for both. That's not fair.
Yeah. You don't want to lump them too close together.
No, not at all.
You got to honor both of them. When did you put your tree up this past weekend? Did that come on Black Friday or slightly?
It did. It did come on Black. Well, we did. Here's what we did. We had gotten a new tree because the lights had gone out in our other one. Well, half the lights. So
started over. Okay.
Right. So we had gotten a new tree. So we put we thought we were being really smart. So we put the old tree up so that we could use that as the training tree to teach Biscuit to leave the tree alone.
Oh, I like it. So the old tree was available, and
right. And
Biscuit couldn't hurt that much more than it was already hurt.
Exactly. It sounds like an ingenious idea, doesn't it? Except epic fail. No. Epic fail. So she chewed on the lower branches, which is fine because we ultimately moved the old tree out to the front porch, and you can only see the upper half of the tree, which is lit, and the bottom half of the tree's been chewed on and doesn't have lights. So, but she's apparently developed a taste for Christmas ornaments.
Oh yeah, I think you told me that she's chewed up 8 so far.
Yeah, 8 and counting.
And still counting.
Yeah. So
gosh.
It doesn't matter what I do. I will accept any ideas, tips, tricks, y'all. She's Cayenne pepper doesn't phase her. Hot sauce. We sprayed vinegar around.
Yeah, she apparently likes spiciness.
She must. We all the stuff you can buy to try to make them stop. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work for.
Maybe some of our loyal listeners will like band together and come up with a nice collection of ornaments to replace the ones that Biscuit chews up.
Just maybe just send me your old tacky ornaments that you don't care if they get destroyed. And this is going to be my all of our special ornaments are like at the tippy top, like
the ones that mean the most to you, they're out of Biscuit's reach.
Yeah, they're out of her reach. But all the others, so if you got old ornaments, send them here, and I'll put those on the tree, and she'll destroy those. And
send an email to demandanddisrupt@gmail.com. Kimberly will tell you where to send them.
It's it's been an adventure. Like I said, whose idea was it to get a puppy? Right. That's what we say around here. Whose idea was it to get a puppy?
Yeah. Whenever Biscuit causes problems, you always hear about it.
I know. Yeah.
Because it was your idea.
It was my idea. Everybody was on board, but it's my fault, and rightly so.
Well, if you get another one, which I bet you will, hopefully it'll be a little more low key than Biscuit.
Another dog? Oh, I'm not even allowed to talk about another dog.
Oh, so you not only will it not happen, it won't even be discussed.
Yeah, no, I have been banned from. Yeah, I will be voted off of this island if I bring up.
Yeah, it'll be 3 against 1, won't it?
Yes, it will. Yes, even my daughter is like, no, this is enough, and she's always for cuddly, furry things, but no, Biscuit is
for puppies.
Yeah, well, yeah. We do thought experiments here, and we did I don't know why we did this, but if you were a Star Wars character, which Star Wars character would you be? And
that's an interesting topic,
isn't it though? And we decided I would be Han Solo because I come up with the stupidest ideas that always go wrong. And
you're always flying solo with those ideas.
So, but then I thought that I would be C-3PO because in one of the movies, he like comes apart. So he's like sort of his parts are all on backwards and he's having to be carried around. So sometimes I feel like I'm really more that. So hard to say. What about you, Sam? If you were a Star Wars character, who would you be?
Oh gosh, I'd have to give it some thought. I need to brush up on my characters too, because I've thought about doing a Star Wars category at one of my trivia nights because it's so dang popular. But
yeah,
sometimes I guess I'd be Han Solo too, because a lot of times I'm solo with my ways of thinking and my ideas and it, it's hard to win people over on them. So maybe you and I might be similar on that front.
We will be Han Solo together, huh?
Han Solo together, yes.
Yeah, I aspire to be Yoda. I really do, but I don't think I'm a Yoda.
Yoda's a pretty high standard.
I know, right? Well, go big or go home, right?
Right. Yeah. Go big or go home. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is always lovely talking with you, and I hope you still sound awake enough to listen to my interview with Theo Braddy. Thank you, Theo Braddy, for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You are most welcome. So for our listeners who may not know, can you tell us about NCIL, what it is and how it came to be?
Yes. NCIL, the National Council on Independent Living, right, is one of the longest lasting disability-led association in the country, actually. It was founded in 1982 by a group of people. Some of them you may or may not know, but it was Marka Bristow, Access Living out of Chicago, Charlie Carr from the Boston Center for Independent Living, Matt and Colleen Starkoff out of St. Louis, and also Julie Human, that I'm sure you have heard of. And they was a group of people who got together and felt that it wouldn't a national network of centers for independent living would be necessary. And back then it was only 10 federally funded centers, and so the idea was, let's figure out how to build upon that, how to build it, so it becomes a model throughout the nation. And so they formulated Nickel, and it wasn't called Nickel in the beginning, right? It was called the National Coalition of Independent Living Programs, NCILP, right? And so they got together in a hotel and formulated the idea, and next thing you know, bylaws were created in 1981, and the articles and things were drafted in 1982, and it was incorporated in St. Louis, Missouri. And back then, Nickel sort of office was sort of wherever the president of that organization lived. That's where the headquarters was situated. In 1987, around in April 24th, I believe, actually, if I'm recalling the documents correctly, Nickel NCILP changed the name to the National Council on Independent Living. And so the mission of Nickel is basically to represent its membership. And its membership is made up of centers for independent living across the country, statewide independent living councils, which is a governor-appointed body that creates a statewide independent living plan, also to advance the rights of people with disabilities. And as well as our membership is just individuals with different disabilities, across the country, and those organizations that have a shared mission and vision that supports through allyship, and those are members as well. So we serve and represent our membership, and primarily one of our primary jobs, obviously, is to work on behalf of Centers for Independent Living to ensure they have enough funding, and statewide independent living councils to ensure they have enough funding, and all of that indirectly benefit people with different disabilities across the country.
Okay. And where are you located? Where's Nickel located now?
Well, initially we was in Washington, D.C. That's where our office was at prior to COVID. And during COVID, like many, we went remote. So now we are situated all across the country. And we work remotely, but we go back to DC. I'm in Washington DC probably about every other week.
Oh, that's fun for you, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's where most of the people with power and influence are at.
Yeah.
Where the legislators are at, where the decision makers are at, and a lot of different organizations and legal organizations and coalitions and grassroots groups. A lot of them rest in DC area, and so it just seemed to be a hub for a lot of disability related discussions and meetings and conferences and so forth. And so I guess that's why we end up there a lot. And we also have our national annual conference in Washington, D.C., and we have been doing that for over 30-some years there. And that's when we get together in July during the anniversary of ADA, and we invite people from all over the country, all over the nation, actually, and including people from outside of the U.S. Last year, we had a bunch of people from China come in and so forth, and delegations seeking how to do stuff as well in their own countries. And so we get there and we host a bunch of workshops, network, I have a lot of corporations and exhibits come in and demonstrate and show people new technologies, especially now with AI and where people get the opportunities to connect and create relationships with folks. Some major leaders in the movement. I remember years ago when I was a ED of my own Center for Independent Living. When I first started coming to the Nickel Conference, I saw people like Justin Dart and Judy Heumann and all of those individuals that I wanted to talk to, but I was just young and inexperienced, and I didn't have enough nerve to go up to those folks. So teachable moment here. If you ever run into people like that, go up to them. They want to talk to you. And so I miss those moments, based on, having that, fear of meeting these great leaders. But that's where they was at. Everybody was at those conferences. And so we got that long history of people that now are in the history books.
What is your vision for the future of Nickel as executive director?
Well, I don't know if you know some of the history recently of Nickel, but Nickel was maybe I've been on a year and a half or so now, but during that period of time right before I came on, Nickel was undergoing some issues in regard to being accused of not necessarily representing all marginalized groups, particularly people from the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and folks who wanted to have more of a say and more of a voice than the typical people who was in leadership at Nickel. And those, unfortunately, was just white men. White men with spinal cord injuries and so forth. And that was typically the leadership. Right, and some of the Black and other marginalized groups, the LBGQ plus community and so forth, wanted to say, hey, we too want a voice. We too want to be a part of leadership. And unfortunately, Nickel didn't accept that challenge. And as a result of that, it was a lot of discourse, a lot of division occurred, right? And people, left, and so eventually, I really give Nickel board and leadership a lot of credit as they reshifted and recomposed themselves. They admitted to some things, right? That they did not include everyone, right? And then had strategic planning and developed some DEIA standing committees and really got into looking at what can they do to truly not leave folks out, right? And they did that. And they even brought me in as a board of directors, a member of the board of directors. And I was not, involved in Nickel at the time. I was doing my own thing as Theo Braddy consultant, specializing in DEAI and other disability-related trainings in my state of Pennsylvania, where I lived. And so I wasn't even really connected to Nickel at the time. But as I got elected to the board and I was participating in that strategic planning initiative, a lot of stuff was discussed and a lot of things that I thought I was going to get pushback on, the board of directors was very receptive to, right? And as I participated in that 2-day training, that 2-day strategic planning, I realized that maybe I could do more as an executive director than I could as the board of directors. So that's when I decided I probably should come out of my semi-retirement and apply for the position, because I really felt the desire to help Nickel reestablish itself.
And how do you think that's going?
Well, I think it's been going really good, because one of the most things that I challenged when I told them through my interview process is I don't believe in leaving anybody out. I believe that we are better people when we are representing all kinds of folk, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy to overlook folks that you don't interact with. And it's easy to ignore folks that can't make it to your annual conference, right? And so there's some things you got to do to make that occur, right? You got to reach out to folks. You got to develop a relationship with folks, right? You got to show folks that you mean what you say. It's one thing, and I say this a lot, it's one thing to have elegant words on your website about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. It's another thing, though, to make that thing a reality internally and externally in everything that you do. That calls for a lot of work. It calls for a lot of introspection. It calls for a lot of not lying to yourself, right? And so we went through all of that, and we made a major emphasis to if we look at diversity, everything we do, we look through that diversity lens. Everything we do, we look through that equity lens. We look through that inclusion lens and that accessibility lens, and make sure that everybody have a place at the table and everybody can have an opportunity to, elevate themselves within leadership. And so we no longer talk about, just the folks in the movement, because the IL movement, it wasn't just nickel. Understand this. It wasn't just nickel, Kimberly. It was, a whole IL movement that left people out, right? And I always say this, even early in our movement, it was the bigger stars, right? The bigger stars that got all the attention, right? Those the one that shine so brightly. The Judy Heumann, the Ed Roberts, right? Those, the Justin Darks, typically those was white folks. But there was a lot of other little stars. They was shining as bright as well, but the big stars just over, that shined them out, right? They was there, they was participating. Those were black folks, the black churches, and a lot of people, like Don Calloway and others. It was, doing that whole sit-in and all of those things that occur. It was the black churches and the Black Panthers that supported the sit-ins and allowed stuff to occur. But when the story was told, all of those folks got left out, right? And so the only people they talked about was those big stars that got all the television attention and radio attention. But the other soldiers that was diverse in makeup and background, didn't get that attention. And only now we are trying to change that and let people know that it was a rich makeup of people from all different backgrounds and areas that contributed to advancing the rights of people with disabilities and defined the independent living movement. And none of those individuals got any credit.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I mean, I hope we do better in the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we are, and as we have done this at Nickel, centers have started to come back, right? People have been welcome, and one of the first thing I did was acknowledge some of those Black leaders, some of those Hispanic leaders, and other and LGBTQ community folks who have made that impact in history. And I brought them to the front of the stage and say it's about time that we honor these folks, right? And so forth. So, and that's going to continue, right? I'm not going to just say it's going to all be about that. I'm just saying we're going to give credit where credit is due, and let everyone know that it was a whole bunch of people who brought us to this point where we are today. You know, I always had a problem with how people would always talk about the civil rights movement as one of the things that gave credit to the independent living movement. We borrowed from the civil rights movement. We borrowed from the women's movement and all of that. But yet, when things occurred to the Black community and you know, in the news and media, rarely did any of the disability movements ever speak up on that. Right? So we can frame a whole movement, independent living movement, you know, saying that, we developed this from the civil rights movement of Rosa Parks and all of those other Black leaders. But when folks start being, murdered in the streets and all the other social justice what occurring during today's time, rarely did the disability movement speak up on that, right? And I thought that was wrong. We can't boast about building a movement on the civil rights movement and not speak on social justice when the time is needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like where we're at now with some of the DEAI stuff, right? A lot of corporations are not doing it because of the political atmosphere, right? It's a hot button topic. So at one time, though, it wasn't. It was the popular thing to do. So the credit that I want to give to corporations is can they still promote DEAI when it's not now popular? Because if they can, that means it meant something, and it was just not the most popular thing to do based on something, happening and being, a popular thing to do. But no, when you can do it when it's not welcome, it means that you really believe in it. You really believe in diversity, equity, inclusion. Even when, most people are saying it's a bad thing.
Right. It may seem cliche for me to quote Helen Keller, but she said, "Until all of us are free, none of us are free."
Yeah. So ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a saying like that, or a cliche like that, came from something. It was the reason it was said.
Right. Cliches are cliches for a reason, right?
Yes.
I recently attended a webinar called The IL Philosophy and Practice, and it was like subtitled Reclaiming Our Movement. So I'm wondering, what does reclaiming our movement look like to you?
A good question. Last year, our L conference was, I came up with the theme, Back to the Future. That was our annual theme, Back to the Future. And the reason I wanted to use that theme is because I believe there's some things that we did well back then. Back then when Judy Human and the 504 sit-ins and all the other things that occurred when people, demonstrated and stayed in the Human Services building 28 days, I believe, and the longest sit-in that ever occurred. There were some things that we did well. And so we always need to look back to see what those things that we did well and do more of it. See those things that we did not do so well and eliminate more of that. But we learn from our history, right? And replicate what we should continue to do and eliminate or improve upon the things that we didn't do so well, right? And I think that is one of the things that we suffer from, right? One of the things I often say to people that ask me about mentoring is that failure has a bad rap, right? And the reason I say that is that you can learn from failure. But in order to learn from failure, you got to pause evaluate, learn from what the mistake you failed in, and become better. If you don't do that, you know what's going to happen. You're just doomed to repeat it, right?
Right.
And so most of my successes come from my failures. And so it's important to understand and look back and learn from our failures, the things that we did wrong, and sort of that, we evaluate those things so we can make our present and our future better.
I think that goes into another question that I had, which is, how can we get younger people involved in the movement? Because there's a whole generation who have grown up under the ADA. And I've talked to other people on the podcast who they don't know about the struggles. They've always had those protections and may not be aware of just how easily those gains can be taken away. So how can we get those young people?
I wish I had the answer to that. I can only tell you what I believe in and what I think. One of the things that we often overlook is when young folks learn from older folks, the young folks function better in the young folks environment. When older folks learn from younger folks, the older folks function better in the older folks environment, right?
Yes.
We learn from each other.
We do. My kids have taught me so much,
right?
I mean,
right?
yeah.
Right. And you function better in your older folk, space, right?
True.
Based on learning from the younger folks and vice versa. As the younger folks, we learn, for example, technology. We can come back and we can do some things and with our older folk buddies, and they are amazed, right? And younger folks, we teach them. We can say, hey, you got to learn. You got to be patient about stuff. You got to, sit back and don't be so quick. Right, and they can go out and they can function better in with their younger peers because they have the ability to be patient and not being so quick to act, right? And so that's the problem. That's the crux of the problem, that we don't learn from each other. We don't interact in a way that when we go in our own spaces, we don't excel. And we need to do that better, right?
Right. So we need
what
to find
typically
ways.
we do though is to say stuff like this, like the younger folks don't know what they're talking about. and our older folks are them whippersnappers don't know what I know, and we go back to our own corners and nobody learned from each other. Right? And that's what's happening in the IL movement. The two generations are not learning from each other. Instead, they want to do their own thing, right? And I'm learning this as I get older, that I don't have the zeal that I used to have, the energy that I used to have. So I need to rely on younger folks to do that. And all I need to do is nudge them along the way by imparting some wisdom or whatever, right? But to get out of the way and let them do their thing. Right. And we don't do that. We don't do that well enough, Kimberly.
I agree. I personally do not do that well enough.
But I do believe we're going to get there, right? I often use this analogy, right? What we do, the IL movement, the advances and all the things that we do, that we are working towards, is not a sprint. It's a marathon. And the thing that we got to do the most, because a marathon has 4 legs. I'm not quite sure what leg of the marathon we're in right now, but I think it may be the second or third. But one of the key things in a marathon is passing the baton off to the next runner without making a mistake. You can't fumble it. You got to do it right. And as we pass our older folks like me, I don't know how old you are, so I can't include you, right? But as I pass that baton on to the younger runners, that I'm hoping that they're going to get that baton and finish the race. It is my responsibility to hand that thing off right. And they got to grab hold on it, and they got to finish the marathon. And hopefully finish.
We talk a lot about universal design and like the social model of disability as being kind of the guiding lights. This is the world we want. To a world where universal design is the norm. People, when people build things, create things, they do it with all people in mind, with us in mind, with people with disabilities in mind.
You might not like this answer. And then again, you might. I don't know. Our greatest challenge is ableism. That's America's greatest challenge. Yeah. Ableism. And what I mean by that is the way people think, their worldview of people with disabilities. And that worldview is steeped in misconception, myths, stereotypes, and sometimes just outright lies. And the problem is that where did you get your worldview from, right? And we get our worldview often from, parents who pass down stuff to us, our schools, what we read. A lot of it is what we read, right? And the worst place to get it is social media, because misinformation and disinformation is so rampant in social media. You don't know what's true and facts anymore because they got alternative facts and all kind of things going on now. That is developed intentionally to mislead you, misinform you. And we develop our worldview. And this is the thing about our worldview, that it has taken a long time to be socialized and conditioned to believe a certain way in regard to our worldview. And once our worldview is developed in regard to a group of people or someone, in particular what we're discussing now, people with disabilities, once our worldview is developed, it's a done deal, right? And you know why? Because we rarely ever reevaluate our worldview once it's developed, right? We don't do that. We just think it to be true, and we keep it. It's intact. And then we start looking for things that support our worldview. And we can find one thing that support it, and that really seals it, right? Because that one thing, that we experience, like I use the example, when I taught in Millsville University and Temple University, a student said, I tried to open this door for a person in a wheelchair and he got angry, and I would never open the door for another person with a disability, right? That one experience can seal and make us ableist, right? Yeah. And so when that occurs, right, when we find something to support our worldview, it's a done deal, right? And that's the problem that we have with ableism. When people, develop these ableist beliefs and ableist ideas, and this is where it really goes wrong, Kimberly, is that when we have people of power and influence who are ableists, and they make decisions based on their ableist ideas, and they create programs that is oppressive and discriminatory based on ableist ideas about people with disabilities that comes from their worldview that they got wrong, or it is flawed. People never think their worldview is wrong or flawed. They think it's right. And that is our challenge, because people with power and influence who are ableist create discriminatory and oppressive programs and systems that keep people with disabilities in situations that they don't really belong, right? That's where that's why Medicaid is so messed up with these eligibility asset limits, right? That keep people locked into poverty, right? It was created based on ableist ideas and people and beliefs that people with disabilities need. These they don't want to work, right? And as they and they just need to be warehoused and taken care of, right? And so we got this system that keep people locked into poverty. Because if they save too much money, they lose what? Health care, attendant care, and so forth.
Right.
Another ableist ideas based on people with power influences in nursing homes, right? Institutions, right? They believe people should be warehoused and kept locked away in the back rooms and so forth. And they created this network of nursing homes where, well, they felt it was better to keep people in those situations out of sight, out of mind. And so these decision makers and people with power and influence create these discriminatory programs and systems that it take years to come out of it. And even today, we still have an institutional bias instead of a community living bias, right? Right?
Yeah.
And it's all based on ableism. And that's why that is our greatest challenge. We can put band-aids and fix a few things, but if we don't change people's worldviews and their mindsets, I call it thinking, STINKING, because it stinks up the place, right? And people are locked into it, thinking with good intention that they're doing the right thing, but they're not, because they believe their worldview is right. And the only thing they do, and I can go on and on in this podcast telling you how many programs and systems people have created based on ableist thinking, right? With good intentions.
Yeah.
But all the same time, keeping us oppressed. And so that's why ableism is our greatest challenge, because education is the key. It took a long time for people to be conditioned to believe a certain way, that people without disabilities are superior to people with disabilities. And it's going to take some time to change that, but education is the key.
Well, I think it's brave, because a lot of times people shy away from even using the word ableist. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. Those of us living with this,
they shy away with using the word racism, but clearly racism exists.
Right.
And so, we got to challenge that thinking and continue to challenge that thinking, because the oppressive systems are in place that we got to tear down.
So I think that is absolutely correct. You are also correct. I do not like that answer. I wanted you to have some awesome answer that was going to solve the problem. So
no. The reality is that it's going to take a while, right?
So because what can we do?
Let me tell you this. Let me share this with you. And I think this is important. In my lifetime, and I have said this many times, I would see physical barriers removed. I would see the landscape of America change in regard to universal accessibility. I would see it. We're already seeing it. It's almost there. We got a few more things to do, but those physical barriers is almost removed. But you know what I won't see in my lifetime?
What's that?
Attitudinal barriers, ableist thinking, right? Because that's where it comes from. People get locked up into their worldview. They'll fight you to the end.
So is there something that gives you hope that we can make that attitudinal shift?
Well, the more that we challenge people thinking, and we do that how? We do this by, I tell people this all the time. You will never know me unless you interact with me, right? And most people without disabilities, especially the decision making, the power of influence, don't interact with people with disabilities, right? And if you don't interact with me, you're never going to develop a relationship with me, right? Because you got to get to know me. And you remember, you was young. You remember when you was talking to your boyfriend and you was telling him, "Oh, you hang up. No, you hang up." Right, right. And you just wanted to talk to him all night because you was developing a relationship. You was getting to know each other. That don't happen in our world, in our space. Right? People don't want to get to know people with diverse disabilities. They're afraid of them. They're uncomfortable around them. Right? You know how many people in this world never ever interact with a person who's blind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's amazing to me that people, I still know people I never interacted with. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to deal with that. It ain't because there's a lack of people who are blind in this world. Right? It ain't that. It's that people, based on their misinformation and all this still typical information that they have, it makes them uncomfortable, and so they don't know what to say or do around folks because they're gonna initially do what they've been taught to do and say stupid stuff. Like they say to me all the time, that wheelchair look like fun. I wish I had one of those. They say stupid stuff like that. And you know, it turns you off just as much as it turned me off. And so we never get an opportunity to interact. I still get people in Costco's who want to come over to me and lay hands on me and pray for me.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
And I'm trying to shop for my family. Right? And I know I can't do nothing to say anything. I have to take that hit because you ain't going to educate nobody in Costco's. Right? And so I find myself where I can really do good in the classroom when I have 16 weeks in a college classroom to teach our young folks. And I can really make a difference there. That's when I really make a difference. Because when they leave that 16-week course, they're gonna have a better understanding. Because I'm gonna hit them hard with stuff. Right? And so that's when you interact with people. And I challenge people in the classroom. One of my students one time, you know, and this is real, right? In my classroom, they call me Dr. Braddy. I said, I don't have a PhD. Right? I just got MSW. You don't even got to call me, but they still call me Dr. Braddy because they respect me in that environment. But as soon as I leave the college with one of them and go out in the community, they become my caregiver. Right? And yeah, in the classroom, I got all that kind of high respect. But I go in the community, they become more valuable and respectful than I do because I become a person who can't speak for myself, can't order food for myself, and they talk to them before they talk to me.
Right.
So that's what I mean by, you know, all of this stuff about yeah, we'll get the physical barriers removed, but we won't change the attitudinal barriers, not in my lifetime.
Right? But it's
I'm not giving up hope. I'm just saying it's gonna call for people to be visible, to be put in these positions. Right. And this I can maybe end with this. I've been talking a lot. But one of the, you know, Senator Casey nominated me right before I came back out of retirement. He nominated me to receive one of the 4 Black trailblazers during Martin Luther King celebration. He does it every year. He nominated me one year, and one of the things he interviewed us, he asked us, you know, what is one of the things that you can say to decision makers or people that one thing that you would be willing to say to them if you had them here? And I thought about it, and I said, well, I would say to them, you need to start appointing people with disabilities in prominent positions of power instead of overlooking them because they do exist, right? And I left him with that. About 4 months went by, and next thing you know, he nominated me for the National Council on Disability.
Oh, see, be careful what you wish for, right?
Right. And I didn't really initially want to take it, but because he listened to me and heard what I said, I did. Right. And that's the thing, right? We go through this world, people with decision and power go through this world thinking that people with disability have nothing value to offer. And so they're never elevated into position where they actually can make a difference. Right?
Right.
And that's a mistake. Because
Yep.
as long as it's just able-bodied people with ableist thinking and beliefs, they're going to continue to do the same old stuff because they don't have the lived experience to understand the things that people with disability go through on a day-to-day basis. They don't have that. Or would they?
Right.
Right? They do able-bodied stuff, and that they know able-bodied experiences. They don't know. I remember one time telling this to one of my students about asking them what a lever handle is on a door. They didn't know. They didn't have a clue because they was so used to that round knob that typical able-bodied people use. I had to explain to them that round knob messes up a quadriplegic and keep them, you might as well be in prison. So this is what a lever handle is. And you put a lever handle instead of the round knob, then I am free to come in and go. That blew them away. It was like I was making magic. They just didn't know that. If they didn't do anything wrong, they are just used to that able-bodied experience. Everyday experience.
But now they'll never forget it.
Right. And that's the thing with able-bodied. Right? They don't intentionally try to do things wrong. All they know is the able-bodied experience. They don't know the disabled experience. And so if you never have people with disabilities in these positions that they can actually educate and do the kind of things that incorporate the knowledge base of living with a disability, we still going to always have oppressive programs, services, and systems that keep us locked into systems of poverty and all kind of other ways of isolations.
Right. So as hard as it is, we still got to get out there and do the work, right?
Oh my goodness. I would never stop people from telling people that, right? We got, and I call it unfinished work.
Right.
Right. That's America's unfinished work. All right. We got to keep yelling to the top of our voice that America made promises. Right. George Bush made a promise when he said, let these chain for walls be tumbled down. Made a promise to America with a signing of the ADA. Right?
Right.
A great civil rights leader said, one of America's unfinished works is the Civil Rights Act. Right? Said that. I add to it is that one of America's greatest unfinished work is ensuring that people with disabilities are treated equally in society. It's unfinished work, right? It's an unfinished promise of the ADA and the Olmstead and money for all of the persons and all the other laws that put in place to ensure equality, right? And we all know there can be laws on the book that never change a thing unless people with disabilities and people without disabilities make sure they are enforced.
Right.
That is our responsibility as people with disabilities living in a world that was not built or designed for us.
Well, not doctor yet, Dr. Theo Braddy, thank you so much for passing the baton, and we will keep doing the work, doing the hard work, and fighting the good fight.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed this conversation.
If you like the podcast, remember to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you really like the podcast, we'd love it if you could leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. That helps more people to find us. If you really, really like the podcast, then please tell someone about it, either in person or send them an email or just share the link on social media. Thank you all. Every bit helps, and it makes a huge difference for us. If you'd like a transcript, please send us an email to demandanddisrupt@gmail.com and put transcript in the subject line. Thanks to Chris Unkin for our theme music. Demand and Disrupt is a publication of the Advocado Press with generous support from the Center for Accessible Living located in Louisville, Kentucky. And you can find links to buy the book a celebration of family, stories of parents with disabilities in our show notes. Thanks, everyone.
You say you've seen a change in me. Just for once I think I would agree. We both know there's a difference. We've had our curtain call, and this time the writing's on the wall. This war of words we can't defend. Two damaged hearts refuse to mend. This situation's pointless with each and every day. It's not a game we need to play. Try to make things better, repair and rearrange things, but each and every letter spells out the need for us to open up our minds and hearts to change. Throw the dice, then what will be, will be. Disregard for good to set us free. There's just no way of knowing if love lives anymore. Turn out the light, then close the door. We try to make things better, repair and rearrange things, but each and